Yeah. Well, yeah, we're on it. Yeah, it's hi to Caitlin. They're all talking about you, Caitlin. They wish you were here to keep me on track. Okay, Light of the World, Red Letter Series number 112 from John 8, 12 to 20. Let's start and go through it. Look at that. I'll read it. Wow. Then Jesus spoke to them again, saying, I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of life. The Pharisees therefore said to him, you bear witness of yourself. Your witness is not true. Jesus answered and said to them, even if I bear witness of myself, my witness is true, for I know where I came from and where I'm going. But you don't know where I came from and where I'm going. You judge according to the flesh. I judge no one. And yet, if I do judge, my judgment is true. For I am not alone, but I am with the Father who sent me. It's also written in your law that the testimony of two men is true. I'm one who bears witness of myself, and the Father who sent me bears witness of me. So he's saying, I've got two witnesses. Then they said to him, where's your Father? Jesus answered, you know neither me nor my Father. If you had known me, you would have known my Father also. These words Jesus spoke in the treasury as he taught in the temple, and no one laid hands on him, for his hour had not yet come. So this is, remember, he's at the festival of Sukkot, the festival of tabernacles, the festival of booths, whatever you want to call it. And it's coming to an end of that. Remember, he stood up at the last day of Sukkot before and proclaimed things. And during the whole festival, it's a 7-day festival, we've seen Jesus move from the temple. We've seen him move from the midst of Jerusalem. We've seen him go out to the pool of Siloam, which is a bit of a distance out. He's gone out there and he's declared things there. So he's literally walking around ministering everywhere he goes. And it will come out just how on point he is at every point that he goes to. There's mission in what he does. So Jesus spoke to them again saying, I am the light of the world. Now, we can pretty much say that it was part of why he was saying this was because of every night of the Sukkot festival, they had 4 huge golden lampstands that they lit. And these lampstands were so big, this picture, it's hard to find a picture, but I don't think it's a good portrayal of it. I'll tell you how big it was. Got this from the Mishnah. This is it's a bit funny because it's an English translation of the Mishnah. But it basically says golden candlesticks were there, and 4 golden bowls on the top of each of them, and 4 ladders to each for the youths. The youths were actually young priests, drawn from the young priests. And in their hands there were jars of oil containing 120 logs, which they poured into the bowls. First thing they would do was light an enormous menorah. On each candlestick there were 4 golden bowls. Children would climb ladders to light the menorah, and they would use 120 logs of oil, which each was 15 litres of oil. The light from the menorah was so great that, according to the Mishnah, it lit up all of Jerusalem. So I think that's an exaggeration, lit up all of Jerusalem, but you could see it from everywhere in Jerusalem. And you probably would have the light. You know how you've got street lights, and it just lights up so much? Our house, we went from a dark place 3 k's out of Moonta, where there's no light, to street lights. And the first night it was a bit hard to sleep. But see, this picture doesn't give it. I don't think it does it service. It says they were huge menorahs. You know what a menorah is? I think there were 7 candles on it. And it gave off so much light. And the ladder is good. Like, they had youths climb the ladder to light them. So in the context of that, reminding people of their delivery from slavery, that's what it's for. The Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, so as to go by day and night. So that's why they lit these huge menorahs, to remind them of their deliverance from slavery. That's what the whole thing is about. And in the midst of that, at this point of the festival, Jesus declares, as they're lighting these things, I think, he says, I'm the light of the world. Once again, what would you think of a guy that's walking around and as they're lighting these things and he's saying, I'm the light of the world? Yeah, you would, wouldn't you? Anyway, it's true. He's declaring who he is. I'm the light of the world. Just as he said, if anybody thirsts, come to me. and all these places. Just quickly, light in the Bible. Psalm of David, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? People who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in the land of the shadow of death, upon them a light has shined. That's, forecasting Christ, but it's also in the when they were in captivity as well, that a light was coming to deliver them. So it's the same thing. I'll also give you a light to the Gentiles, that you should be my salvation to the ends of the earth. That's obviously pointing to Jesus being a light to the Gentiles as well as the Jews. So we've got this theme of light. And he says to him again, he says, I'm the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of life. To follow in the Greek, whatever that says, it infers discipleship, attachment, obedience. More than just, we think of follow just as following, but it's a close follow, and to walk in the steps of Messiah. The rabbis back then, the young rabbis in training would learn to do everything as their rabbi did. Whether it's Jesus, Shammai, any of those rabbis, they learnt to literally, when they said walk like them, they literally took on the same walk. They would watch how the rabbi walks, and they would walk. They would eat like the rabbi eats. They would pray like the rabbi prays. They would literally they would dress like the rabbi dressed. They would literally pattern their lives out of discipleship, attached. They would eat, sleep, breathe with their rabbi. 3 years of just following didn't mean just following. It meant just being attached to them. So I translated it, he who is attached to Jesus, discipled by Jesus, obedient to Jesus, will not walk in darkness, but have the light of life. I think it's a weightier thing than just, we can say, I follow Jesus, but it means more than just knowing who he is. It means more than reading about him. It means more than studying him. It means living your life the way he lived to a degree and following him. So that's a promise. Light in Hebrew, it equals a lot of things, but I picked these out: righteousness, revelation, life. Psalms say, your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. The path of the just is like the shining sun that shines ever brighter unto the perfect day. So there's this whole picture of light, being life and goodness. And then the other side, darkness, is sin, ignorance and blindness. Isaiah said, therefore justice is far from us, nor does righteousness overtake us. We look for light, but there's darkness. For brightness, but we walk in blackness. We grope for the wall like the blind. Ever got up in the middle of the night and look for the light switch in a strange house that you're in? Or even the door? That's the picture I got. You wake up and you forget where you are. Yeah, I tripped over something the other day in the caravan. But we grope for the wall like the blind, and we grope as if we had no eyes. We stumble at noondays as at twilight. We're as dead men in desolate places. So even in the noonday sun, it's talking about being spiritually blind. So light talks about life and God. Darkness talks about the other side of life. Don't strive to... This whole... When you talk... I'll bring it out further, but we don't strive to follow principles. We strive to follow Jesus. Having said that, there are many principles that are good. And principles, I think, are like putting up framework. I don't know, and there's different people for different things, but, who loves lists? Who loves lists? Yeah, who's sort of organised? You mightn't be organised, but you love lists. Who doesn't like lists? Yeah, they're the weirdos. But what I say is lists and things are good sometimes. I tried for years to get my wife to write a list. That's another story altogether. But if you've got a wife that won't write a list, then stop trying now. It'll never work. But some principles are good. It's good to know. It's good to have boundaries and things. But they can't be our life. We can't be bound by those principles, bound by those boundaries. We need to be bound by Jesus. Bound by following him and seeing what he's doing. Application. Jesus' light in us, the revelation, the righteousness, the life grows brighter through relationship, not religion. And the whole problem of these religious guys back in Jesus' day was they had religion, but they had no relationship. And if I haven't got time because I'm trying to be quick, but if you know your Bible history, you see Malachi, the Bible narrative ends with, you've got all the religious things, and they're in fairly good order. You've got the judges and the kings and everything, and you've got the temple. It's all working fairly well. But then you've got 400 years in between when the New Testament opens. You see the New Testament open, and it's all gone to whatever word you want to add there, because you've got the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and all these guys, and they're running the religious system. And we just enter into the New Testament, and Jesus is under this system of religiosity, and there's no relationship, there's nothing happening properly, and that's what's happening, and that's the system. Like I said, he didn't buck against it because he knew it was the system. There was a usefulness in the system, because that was what was going to take him to the cross, and that was going to redeem our sins. So he let it happen anyhow, but a lot of it wasn't good. The religious people of the day, they were just running on religion and no relationship at all. Thank you. Question: how does that relate to us? What does my Christian life look like? I think that's the application to us. When you put all that together and you've got this religiosity, and like he says to him, he says, you don't even know my Father, and you don't know me. That they are the Jewish religion at the time. And he says, you don't even know my Father. Who's his Father? His Father's Yahweh, Adonai, God. The God that the religious people are supposed to be following. And he says, you don't even know my Father, and so you don't know me. And the question is the same for us. We can be in a religious system, and we can have all sorts of labels, and we can have whatever labels you want to put above the door of the church, or you can say, I'm a this, I'm a that, whatever denomination we are. But what does that look like? Does it look like a religion, or does it look like a relationship? Are you just got these principles that you do? Do you attend church? Do you tithe? Do you pray even? Do you do this? Do you do that? And I'm not saying any of them things are bad, but if that's the priority and no relationship, then the fear is you're like the Pharisees, that you don't even know the Father, that you don't even know the Son. And I've met many people like that. The Pharisees therefore said to him, you bear witness of yourself. Your witness is not true. And Jesus answered and said to them, this is a lot in it, but I'll just skim over this quickly. He says, even if I bear witness of myself, my witness is true, for I know where I came from. I know where I'm going. There's all application in that for you and me as well, to know where you came from, know where you're going. It's the big questions of life. Where did I come from? Why am I here? What am I doing? Where am I going? The other questions of life. Why am I here? What am I doing? And where am I going? If you can sort that out, you're doing pretty well. But you do not know where I come from or where I'm going. You judge according to the flesh. I judge no one. Yet if I do judge, my judgment's true, for I'm not alone, but I'm with the Father who sent me. It's also written in your law that the testimony of two men is true. I'm one who bears witness of myself, and the Father who sent me bears witness of me. So what he's doing is legaling up on these guys. They still don't see it, but it's another legal challenge from them. They say, you've got no witness to say who you are. So it goes back to Deuteronomy. One witness shall not rise against a man concerning any iniquity or any sin that he commits. By the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses the matter shall be established. So he's establishing. They can't see it, doesn't matter. It's missed on them, but we get it. We know who he is. But the thing I wanted to draw out of this, more so than we know who Jesus is, so we don't have to prove that to ourselves. But what I think was important here to see is that law is important. Law is important. I'm glad we've got Ashlyn coming next week, because when she comes and introduces us to some of the things that are happening in our law system, in our political system, we will see how important law is. And how important it is that we step up and do something and be the salt and be the light of this world. Law is important. It's important we get law right. We need to fight to get law right. Law needs to serve us rather than enslave us. We can all jump up and down and say, this is a terrible law. Oh, this is terrible. But we can do things about it. Even more than prayer. We can get involved, and that's what Ashlyn's going to tell us about next week. I found this, countries with the weakest rule of law, 24 to 25. So the rule of law index, which measures adherence to law, constraints on government and corruption, ranks countries on a scale of 2 to 5 weak to 2 to 5 strong. Then you've got Somalia with the lowest scores at minus 2.21. Then Venezuela, frequently ranked lowest for safety and rule of law. Afghanistan, who wants to go there? Nobody. Ranked lowest for human rights. Syria, very low scores for rule of law and corruption. Eritrea and, how do you say that, Turkmenistan? Don't even know where that is. Who? Turkmenistan. Is that good? Consistently ranked lowest for human rights protection. And I looked at them and I thought, because people, and Venezuela sticks out to me. Frequently ranked lowest for safety and rule of law. Venezuela is about 96% Roman Catholic, which you would call Christian. So like about 96. You know what the problem with Venezuela is? It's their government. Drugs, yeah. They're drugs. Because the government doesn't enforce drug laws because they make a lot of money out of their drugs. So what I'm saying is law is important. It's important you get government right. You can be 96% Christian and get it wrong. So, as Christians, as light and salt, we need to be aware of this stuff and we can do things about it. Anyhow, so the expert witness, Jesus makes it clear there's two witnesses to what he's saying, himself and the Father. The Pharisees, they know Torah, but they don't know the Father. They're quoting, they're saying you're illegitimate because you haven't got two witnesses. They know Torah, they know the teaching, but they don't know the Father. Pharisees' lives looked like religion, not relationship. Again, it's that same theme. It just looked all like religion. They could quote stuff at you. I don't know if you've had people in your life that can quote the Bible at you, but they don't. Some of them have no life, but they can quote the Bible at you. That sort of works for them. But then they said to him, "Where's your father?" So they're looking for his father. Like, who's your father? Well, his father's actually, his earthly father's passed away by now. But, he's not talking about his earthly father. You're not talking about Joseph. Jesus ben Yosef, his father. He's talking about his father. He says, neither me nor my father, if you'd known me, you would have known my father also. And if they'd known the Father, they would have recognized him. But they knew neither. So they never sought to get to know Jesus. They sought to use their religion to remove Jesus. And it's often what you find that people will use their religion to remove Jesus or nullify Jesus. No, I won't go there. I'll just say, there's even some major religions nowadays that nullify Jesus. They nullify the virgin birth. They throw out a lot of stuff because they've become religious. And they've read Torah, they've read teachings, and they've manipulated it and they're trying to understand it with their own mind, because they can't comprehend the virgin birth in their own mind, so they change it to suit themselves. And they remove Jesus. They remove Jesus. Interesting observation. The world surrounding us has many competing religious systems. At the moment, look around. My goodness. Did I put socialism there? We've got socialism rife in our country. Let's call it communism. We've got environmentalism. My goodness. Net zero. Sending us broke. It's a religious system. It's worship of the earth and all this sort of stuff. That's a religion. You quote facts to these environmentalists that want to go net zero, stuff like, you say to them, like, actually, we know that if Australia turned off everything and no longer existed on the planet, we would contribute to less than 1% of the emissions of the globe, which is fact. And what do? Oh, yeah, but it's important. They just move and shift and anyhow. I'm thinking of all sorts of bad names that I can't say in church. It's just ridiculous. Environmentalism, nationalism, scientism, evolutionism, secular humanism, individualism, and wokeism, whatever that is. All I know is go woke and you'll go broke. Thank God, go woke, you'll go broke. All seek to remove Jesus. All of them want nothing to do with Jesus. They all seek to remove Jesus, but they are all, let me tell you, they are all religions in themselves. They're working on their own sort of faith they all need faith to work, but their own faith in themselves. So seeking anything other than Jesus will always plunge the seeker or the society into darkness. Look at all of those things. Look at where communism leads. And I can't believe in my lifetime. It's crazy. It's crazy. Never seen anything like it. My mother escaped on a train from East Germany to West Germany for fear of their lives. Left everything. 2-story beautiful house, barber business, pets, my mum's doll, everything, to get away from communism. Dad was interned. Dad was born in Joppa, born in Tel Aviv, in Palestine. He was German by birth, so the Second World War broke out. They didn't know what to do with him. To whose side are you on? So they interned him. All of this stuff, all of these isms, and now we see our country going back into where it shouldn't go. We've got to fight, and we can fight. What can we do? The best and first thing you can do is listen to Jesus. You're the light of the world. A city that's set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do they light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. And I can't but notice the similarity between lighting these massive menorahs in the festival of Sukkot that are bringing light to the whole of Jerusalem, and this, where Jesus is saying, you light your lamp, it brings light to the whole household. Whoever you are in your household, it brings light to your household. Whether you're the mum, whether you're the dad, whether you're a child, whether you've got siblings or whatever, you light your light, it brings light to the whole household. Another rule that we had in our family was, we'd say to the kids, who are you here to please? I can't remember how we said it, it's been so long, but, we'd say, what's your job? No. So my job is to make everybody else happy. Because we worked out early in life, if your job is to make you happy, and you've got a family of, how many kids do we have? 4, didn't we? So 6 of us. So if you've got a family of 6 and you're trying to make you happy, you've got one person trying to make you happy, and you've got another 5 trying to make them happy. But we worked out early on, if your job was to make everybody else happy, you were trying to make 5 other people happy. So every person had 5 other people trying to make them happy. That worked when we reminded them. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing. If your job is to light the life and bring life to everybody else, and everybody else is doing that, then that's what works. It's when we get selfish that things happen. Every marriage breakdown, you've just got to ask one question at the breakdown. It's okay, who got selfish? You've got 2 people married, and they love each other, and they do everything for each other, and then 7 years' time, this is a magic number, things start to fall apart, you just say, okay, who got selfish? Who started wanting for themselves? And that's when it breaks down. That's when everything breaks down, when we get selfish. John's communion message was beautiful this morning. Jesus did everything for everybody else and didn't ever ask for anything. Didn't ever ask for anything, just did everything for everybody else. That's the life that we're to emulate. And I know we can't do that. We've got to do some things for ourselves, like please have a shower before you come to church. And you've got to work for yourself and do that sort of stuff. But that's the picture, to do stuff for others. We shine our light by shining clarity where there's confusion. Shining compassion where there's condemnation. Shining truth where there's lies. Shining life where there's death. And he said, this has been my challenge that God's given me, and I've tried to be passing it on to you, because who knows that it's not nice to sit with a challenge yourself unless you can share it, make other people feel challenged as well. So just makes you feel better. But this is what God's been challenging me. Bring clarity where there's confusion. Like if you're in a conversation and everybody's talking about stuff that is just wrong, bring some clarity. And say, well, hang on a minute. Can I say something? Bring some clarity to that. With compassion where there's condemning. If you've got people, whatever, shine the truth where there's lies if you know that's happening. We've got to be that light. We've got to be that salt. We've got to bring it. And my message has been, we've got to be a voice. We can be silent no more. We've got to stand up and shining light where there's darkness. We've got to do what we can. These words Jesus spoke in the treasury as he taught in the temple, and no one laid hands on him, for his hour had not yet come. There's a lot in that, but the main thing is they didn't do anything because he's not ready to go yet. He's got other things to do. But the treasury, and that's not a good photo either. Picture, I don't know why people get things wrong. But what there was these big brass funnel things on the treasury. The treasury was where they took money for the temple. And what happened was you threw a coin in there, and it's like those, those things that you can put a coin in and they roll down, they go all the way down. Well, this sort of thing, you threw your coins in there and it made a loud noise, like a ringing noise. So you could walk past the temple and throw some money in there and everybody hear that, Then they're all the way along the wall, so you're going to save them all up and you throw another one in there. Everybody hear that? So there was the idea. And it's interesting that it happened here, because the significance is that Jesus chose his words so well according to the locations and the audience he found himself in. The Pool of Siloam, remember, he's a few distance out Jerusalem at the Pool of Siloam, and that they're doing that thing where they drew the water out and all that thing, and he says, if anybody thirsts, let him come to me and drink. And he's there where everybody's thinking about drinking and that stuff. The outer courts, the court of women, where women were allowed, they weren't allowed any further in than the outer courts. And you've got this woman coming who's caught in adultery. So there's women there, not just men. And he's proclaiming to this women. And there would have been other women there listening on. I'm sure, we always see the pictures, and it's never quiet in Jerusalem, especially at Sukkot. There's just people everywhere. Margaret would know. Just people. There's not a quiet little gathering. Like everybody's looking in what's going on here. And Jesus says to this woman, neither do I condemn you, go and sin no more. All the other women are, what, what's going on with that? And it would have spread like wildfire through the women. This woman, she was caught in adultery. She was under a death sentence. They were going to kill him. This guy, this rabbi, this Jesus, this guy who's yelling out all this random stuff all the time. He says she's not condemned. And I don't know, he's drawn in the dirt. Then they all left, What's with that? So everything he's doing is to cause people to wonder what's going on. And now at the treasury, where access to everybody. Why is there access to everybody for the treasury? Because the temple wants as much money as they can get. So they let everybody up to the treasury, because anybody can put money in those funnel things. And that's where he says, I'm the light of the world. I'm the light of the world. We need to choose our words and actions well, according to the audience and locations we find ourselves in. I heard some great news from Bacher this morning, stuff that happened at where he works, but I don't want to tell you. Maybe he can tell the testimony later on when we turn the cameras off. But it's really good. We need to choose our words and our actions well, according to the audiences and locations we find ourselves in. I'm really good with people like on the left, but the people on the right I really struggle with. They don't get my sense of humour. They don't understand sarcasm. They just get upset and cry. And so I just leave them alone. They're out the back with the girls who are really good with them. But even at work, they just they scare me a little bit. They have runny noses, they cry. I like making big ones cry, but little ones, you can't stop them. But we need to choose well. And I've got an example Example, choose well your words. O ye Corinthians, our mouth is open unto you, our heart is enlarged. Ye are not straitened in us, but ye are straitened in your own bowels. Now for a recompense in the same, I speak as unto my children, be ye also enlarged. Can anybody tell me what that means? Now, this you could say to the people this would be a really good thing to the people on the left. You could say, interpret this for me. You could say, give me a 1,500 word essay on what that means. And they would do it. I used to have to do this when I did my degree. I'd get something weird. It wasn't that, it was theological questions. And I'd look at it and I'd say, what is that talking about? And then I'd have to do hours and hours and hours of study on what they were talking about. And then finally it's, now I know what they're talking about. Now I can write my essay. So you could do that to the people on the left, but how would that go with the people on the right, those little ones? It wouldn't work at all. But look at this. Oh, dear Corinthian friends, we've spoken honestly with you, and our hearts are open to you. There's no lack of love on our part, but you've withheld your love from us. I'm asking you to respond as if you were my own children. Open your hearts to us. And I'm not having a go at the King James Version, because I study with the King James Version. But often I don't understand what it's talking about. So I often have to go to a New Living Translation or something to find out what it's actually talking about. But I'm not having a go at the King James Version. Like I say, I use mainly New King James Version, but I study from that. But what I'm saying is your audience, if you've got those little children, like there's little children out the back now in kids' church, those ladies are not going to be teaching King James Bible because it would take too long, because they'd have to teach all the English as well. So what they're going to use is something like the New Living Translation to get the message into their hearts. And where you and me are, we've often got to change the way we are to fit in with the way someone else is. Paul said it best when he said this. He says, even though I'm a free man with no master, I've become a slave to all people to bring many to Christ. When I was with the Jews, I lived like a Jew to bring the Jews to Christ. So I lived under their Torah, under their teaching, under their law. When I was with those who follow the Jewish law, I too lived under that law. So that's them. Even though I'm not subject to the law, I did this so I could bring to Christ those who are under the law. So he did the law to bring them to, so they didn't have a problem with him. When I'm with the Gentiles who do not follow the Jewish law, I too live apart from that law so I can bring them to Christ. But I do not ignore the law of God, I obey the law of Christ. So this is Paul. So what's the law of Christ? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul. Love your neighbour as yourself. That's what he did. He made sure he encompassed all the law by loving, but he didn't have to do all the other stuff. Where are I to follow the live of Christ? But I do not ignore the law of God. I obey the law of Christ. When I am with those who are weak, I share their weakness. And you can look at the weakness, those who were like vegetarians and stuff. Talk to me about that later. I share their weakness, for I want to bring the weak to Christ. Not vegetarians, people that don't eat meat. That's you know what I mean. All that stuff. Yes, I try to find common ground with everyone, doing everything I can to save some. I do everything to spread the good news and share in its blessings. Don't you realise that in a race everyone wins, but only one person gets the prize? So run to win. It's interesting. I keep thinking. I thought again. I went on a trip. Took some school students to. I'd never been there before, to the markets, the sheep and the cattle markets, out at Dublin. The state livestock exchange, South Australian Livestock Exchange, and we got there and we're there with a what do they call them, stock agent. That's the word. There was a stock agent, and he looked a bit worried, and he said to me and the other teacher, he said, when we get there, there's going to be some language. And we said, oh yeah, that's fine. I said, kids, there's going to be language, and I said to one of them, I said, you probably know it all already, all the language. But I thought of this, and I thought, we were stepping in, and I loved it. I loved the experience of stepping in. There's cowboys and cowgirls, like literal. We used to bring cattle and that down from the NT, and Rob would know all about Northern Territory cowboys. He's a bit of one himself. Got the mo happening and the Kubra. He's good at that sort of language as well. But but I thought, just to be able to be immersed in that was good for me, and it was good for the kids to see another area of life that if we had said, oh no, we can't go there because they're going to be swearing, we would have missed out on that whole experience. And I know people like that. I know people that will cut themselves off from people because they say, oh no, they swear, or oh no, they drink, or oh no, they this, or oh no, they that. And we really, Paul was the opposite. Paul was the opposite. He put himself in situations, but he adjusted himself to those situations. He didn't swear with him. He didn't do whatever. He didn't. But he put him, and that needs to be our heart as well. Just because somebody's different doesn't mean that they're wrong. Not wrong, just different. I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to say a prayer, because who's ready for lunch? Who's ready for lunch? So we're going to say a prayer. If you're comfortable to stand up and say this prayer with me, and then we can have lunch together. So are you ready? If you agree with it, say amen at the end. Lord Jesus, you are the light of the world. Thank you for calling us out of darkness into your marvellous light. Shine into every corner of our lives. Expose what needs to change. Heal what needs healing. Guide our steps this week. Help us to connect deeply with you, to care well for those around us, and to allow your Spirit to transform us. May we not just see your light, may we faithfully be your light. In your mighty name, amen. Amen.